Hi, my name is Kate Mayava from HeiQ, the Swiss leader in textile innovation effects. Today I'm going to speak to you about HeiQ's XReflex, the breathable radiant barrier technology. Joining me is Tom Hussey, CEO and co-founder of XReflex. You will see that we have a chat option where you can ask questions and we will respond to them at the end of the presentation. Please don't hesitate to ask any, and we'll also follow up after the presentation where we can send out this presentation for you and welcome any additional questions. And Tom, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Kate. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name's Tom Hussey. As Kate mentioned, I'm the CEO and co-founder of XReflex. XReflex is based in Australia and we specialize in advanced coating technologies for the textile industry. We've been collaborating with HeiQ for a number of years, and one of the results of this collaboration is XReflex. We have a joint venture set up with HeiQ that's based in Taiwan, and that's where we manufacture materials using the technology.
Thanks, Tom. So what is XReflex? This is our means to make products thinner, lighter, and warmer using radiant barrier technology. The human body loses heat through evaporation, conduction, convection, and mostly through radiation, which is about 60%. Metabolic heat is continually produced in the body. Thermal radiation from the body is heat loss in the form of far infrared rays, which you can see if you look in this diagram next to the writing here. Currently, insulating textile materials stop heat loss by trapping air. This could be in the means of using down, synthetic padding, fleece. So what we looked at is how can we increase the efficiency of insulation materials? Can we trap the same heat using half the insulation? XReflex radiant barrier technology is able to do this. This patented technology is an ultra-thin, high heat reflective surface added by high-tech vapor deposition. The radiant barrier reflects your energetic infrared body heat waves for improved thermal retention. You can see in the middle of the screen the microscopic view of the front face of a woven fabric and the back face. As you can see, the coating is so fine, it doesn't inhibit the breathability, it doesn't affect the weight, it makes no noise. It's very different to using a foil or printing where it isn't inhibiting the characteristics of the fabric in any way. This really is quite game-changing for this type of technology. If you look at the illustration on the left, you can see we use the radiant barrier combined with an insulation so that the barrier reflects far infrared rays, reducing heat loss through this type of assembly. There are different ways to use the technology, whether it's on the outer fabric, which you can see in this example, the silver being the radiant barrier under the top picture in the image, or whether it is in a lining where it's then against your skin but reflecting outwards, or whether it's on a scrim. Whichever way you choose the XReflex, it must face the insulation. So this always has to be built as an assembly together with an insulation. The insulations which work the best are those which have large air gaps. This is very important. So how do we trap more heat with less insulation materials? In this image, you see a standard insulation at 80 grams. Here we have XReflex with one fabric layer where you can see we've got 25% less bulk, but we're still able to achieve the same warmth. Now, if we wanted something that had even less bulk and still had the same warmth, we can use 2 layers of XReflex. This really is quite game-changing where you want to have something that has more mobility, reduce the bulk, but still keep that same warmth. What does it mean for the environment? We are a very environmentally conscious company, and this definitely reduces your carbon footprint. You can have up to 50% savings in insulation. So in terms of 10,000 jackets, that means 81,000 litres of water savings, 3.7 tonnes of CO2, and 141,000 megajoules of energy. So pretty significant. The carbon footprint of the coating itself is very small. So what do we offer? We have a catalogue of fabrics with our XReflex radiant barriers. So the fabrics are for sale. This includes lightweight woven fabrics, which are in a range of polyester and nylon options. We do not offer it in natural fibres. They range from 30 to 70 grams, 15 to 50 denier, and they're mostly all made from recycled materials. We can lab match to your own colour. The actual coating itself always remains the same colour and is in the inside. We also offer a scrim, which has the XReflex radiant barrier applied. It's 100% polyester spun bond, available in 12 or 30 grams, and we offer the 12 grams in stock service, so you have very low MOQs. This can be used together with any shell or lining fabric if you choose to go this route. In addition, we do have XReflex insulations. These are optimized so that when you combine it with the radiant barrier, you get the best results. These have large air gaps, which really show great ability to generate warmth together with the XReflex. They're 100% polyester, 90% recycled content, and we have a range of 40 to 100 grams. So really, the advantages on using XReflex is you're able to create thinner, lighter, and warmer insulated textile products. It is a patented radiant barrier technology, which allows higher insulation efficiency. We can save up to 50% insulation material for more packable garments. We unchange the fabric properties. So the breathability, the aesthetics, the noise, the touch, if it has DWR, if it is downproof, everything remains unchanged. There's a reduced environmental footprint, and it has exceptional efficiency and durability, lasting more than 20 plus washes. The materials are made from recycled sources and are also recyclable. HeiQ will also offer you marketing support, whether it be for your sales force or directly to your consumer. We can do all sorts of things that will partner with you, whether it be hang tags, labels, flyers, whatever you need, we're here to support you with this product. So what sort of things can it go into? There's such a range, whether it's gloves, vests, jackets. We have it in duvet inners, we have it in sleeping bags, it could be in sleeping mats. There are a lot of opportunities. The key is the way in which you assemble it with the appropriate insulation, whether you choose the outer fabric, the lining, or you want to use the scrim. We will work with you to help build your packages together to generate the best results. We really welcome any questions. Currently in store, if you'd like to see it, we have Zara with it in the fashion end. We also have one of the largest outdoor activewear brands using it within their apparel line, and also sleeping bags. So we're really excited at the great results that we're seeing with the technology and the greater warmth that we're able to generate, with really still maintaining what we're standing for to keep things thinner, lighter, and warmer. Tom, perhaps you would like to take some of the questions if we have some coming through.
Thanks, Kate. So just a reminder to everyone, any questions, please send them through the Q&A function, and I'll try and answer as many as possible right now to the entire audience. So got a few coming in now. So the first question is, why do you need to use HeiQ XReflex fabrics together with insulation? So radiant barriers need to be insulated to prevent conduction, and they also cannot be covered up with another material. So with our radiant barrier fabrics and also the scrims, it's really important that we have some kind of air gap that's directly adjacent to the reflective surface. So the best way to do this is to combine it with an insulation layer. And that's why we offer our own insulation, because we're able to optimize that so that it gives the best performance. So the structure of the insulation is optimized so that it works really well together with the radiant barrier. There definitely are a range of other insulations that work well, but absolutely we like to work with you to select the correct material. So if you have your own insulation that you like to use, then please send it to us. We can test and evaluate whether it's compatible. Okay, another question is, what test methods do you use to prove the performance? So generally we test the assembly of the layers using a sweating guarded hot plate. So we use the ISO 11098 standard. We do have a few other methods that we use, a few other instruments, but I think the best method is the sweating guarded hot plate. It is very important then when you're testing the materials that you test as a layered assembly. So if you just take the radiant barrier fabrics by themselves and put them directly on the hot plate, you're not going to see a result, because that reflective surface is likely to be touching the heat source directly, and it's just going to conduct heat. So it's really important that we test the full assembly as you would have it assembled in the finished product. Another question, any plans to manufacture in the USA? At the moment, we don't have a supply chain set up in the US, unfortunately, but we're always considering options to expand. So perhaps in the future, but unfortunately not at the moment. Another question, do you have any plans to sell the chemistry alone so that we can use current mills that we work with? So unfortunately, the way that we produce the coating is really specialized. So we're not using coating processes or equipment and any of the technology involved that's regular in the textile industry. So it's not something that we can sell chemistry to another mill to apply. So we've set up a manufacturing base in Taiwan, and we need to apply the coating ourselves. And that's one of the reasons why we actually offer the finished fabrics directly. So we manufacture the fabrics and we offer the fabrics complete, finished and ready to use. In some cases, we can work with you or your mill to treat fabrics that are provided to us. That is something we need to discuss on a case-by-case basis, because there are some specific requirements in the fabric that comes to us to make sure we can treat it. What are some of the MOQs for lab dipped materials? Do these ship directly from Taiwan? Yeah, so our standard MOQ for the woven fabrics that we can lab dip and produce to order is 3,000 yards. So that's 3,000 yards per order, and within that we can do a color MOQ of 1,000 yards. We can definitely do smaller quantities for sample orders, and there are some surcharges attached to that, and all of the materials shipped from Taiwan. So another question about why the radiant barrier needs to face the insulation, and why does it work when facing away from the body? So we actually have a slide that we can use to explain that. Kate, are you able to flick to the following slides? Perfect, thank you. So why does it work when facing away from the body? So I think I've addressed the first part of that question already. So why it needs to face the insulation. That's so that we are insulating that radiant barrier, so providing that air gap next to the radiant barrier. Why does it work when facing away from the body? Well, that's a pretty interesting question, because most people view these as only as reflective surfaces. So therefore, you'd expect that the radiant barrier needs to face towards the heat source, which is your body, so that it reflects heat back. Essentially, what we're producing here is what we call a low emissivity surface. And so that will work to reflect heat, like we see in this diagram in the middle. So therefore it's working when you're positioning on the outer layer facing the body. But importantly, if you flip it around the other way, so that the reflective surface or the radiant barrier surface is facing away from the body, it's going to also work to reduce the emission of heat. So if you're heating the backside of that fabric, it's going to help to reduce the radiation away from the body. So therefore, we can actually use these layers on the lining fabric as long as they're still facing the insulation, so facing away from the body. It works just as well as if you'd use it on the outer layer facing inwards. And importantly, as Kate mentioned in the presentation, we can actually use 2 layers combined together, and we get a really good boost in performance with both of them working. Okay, another question here. How much can you reduce the insulation weight to get the same thermal resistance result? So definitely it does vary based on the type of insulation that we're using and the spec of the insulation. But typically, when we're using one radiant barrier, so for example, on the outer shell facing inwards or on the lining facing outwards, we can save around 25% of the insulation weight. And with 2 layers, we can save around 50%. So quite a significant saving. Another question here, how would you suggest testing production to ensure performance? That's a good question. So there are different ways that it can be done. We always like to measure the thermal performance. So it is possible to measure reflectivity or emissivity of the fabric, but we prefer to measure the fabrics in a layered assembly using a sweating guarded hot plate. We also have some other instruments that can be used to measure, they're essentially miniature sweating guarded hot plates that are really good for fast quality checking from production. Another method that we often use if we want to just look at and quantify the performance of the fabric is, instead of using the radiant barrier assembled with an insulation, we remove that insulation and produce an air gap. So say a 10mm air gap on the hot plate. And that's a really nice, simple, direct method to check that you're getting consistent performance. And we're happy to work with you to set up that process. And we have that capability as well to test on our side. And absolutely, we're testing the products that we're producing to make sure we have consistent quality. Another question, does it have potential for thermal camouflage? Absolutely. So in reducing the radiant heat loss from the body, you're also reducing essentially the heat signature. So the amount of radiation, amount of heat that you're radiating. So therefore for infrared cameras and so on, you become less visible. So that's definitely a possibility. What kind of arrangements can be used? So we have another diagram. Kate, if you're able to switch to the next slide, I believe. So this is an example of the kind of arrangements that we can achieve, and it's definitely not everything that can be done. So if we look at the top, that's the kind of standard one that we've discussed throughout the presentation, with one XReflex layer positioned on the top. As we said, you could flip that around so it's on the lining instead. As a second option, you could use it on both the shell and the lining. Options C and D are examples where we use the scrim fabric. So the really nice thing about the scrim is it can just be inserted between any existing face fabric that you might be using, and then above the insulation. So if, for example, you have a particular material that you want to keep using, we can use the scrim and add the technology into the assembly. So in that case, we're showing use of 1 or 2 scrim layers. The third one, the final one at the bottom, is quite interesting, and this is a way of really maximizing the thermal resistance of the assemblies, where we can stack multiple layers of insulation and scrim and really get some extremely high thermal resistance values. Is the MVTR affected? So no, because we're not changing the air permeability or any of the physical properties of the fabrics that we're treating, the breathability essentially of the fabrics are not affected in any way. So ultimately, the breathability of your assembly will come back to the fabrics that you select, and we have a range of fabrics that you can choose from to create the best solution for your product. And of course, we can work with you to optimize that or develop new materials to suit. Lead time for delivery. So for the scrim materials, one of the really great advantages there is that we stock support those materials. So it's very short lead time. We just need to essentially ship. For the fabrics, we have what are essentially typical woven fabric lead times that are common in Taiwan. And so that's a standard lead time of 45 days. For the finished fabric, of course, that's after we have the lab dips approved and everything signed off. Of course, with all woven fabrics, it's important that we have grades booked and prepared. So we always want to work with you to plan production lead times. So a question here, are these fabrics sustainable with metal on them? So yes, it is a metallic coating. It's an aluminium-based coating. The amount of aluminium that we use is extremely small. So we're talking fractions of a gram per square meter, and definitely much less than, we're talking much less than 1 gram in an entire garment. That very small amount of aluminium offsets a really significant amount of polyester, and so the environmental footprint numbers that we shared earlier in the presentation are essentially the footprint of the manufacture of the polyester that we save, and then subtracting the footprint of the coating that we applied. So that already factors in what's going into the product. So there's a huge difference there. Tiny amount goes in, huge amount comes out. Are there any American brands using XReflex? Yes, definitely. So I believe we mentioned one of the major outdoor brands is using the technology. So there's been products promoted using it, very high-end applications, really fantastic performance from those products. And that is a US brand. Great, so that's all the questions that have come through. Please, if there's anything else, please send them through now and we'll get to them. Okay, another question coming through here. Can the fabric still have a ciré or other coating to pass the rain test? Yes, definitely. So many of the fabrics in our catalog are calendared and do pass the rain test. So that's no problem. And of course, within our catalog, we can adjust the finishing process to suit needs as well. So definitely please talk to us if you have some requirements, and we'd be more than happy to work with you to solve them.
We do also apply a DWR on the fabric using HeiQ's C0 technology. All right, well, thank you to everyone for your time. Again, welcome any follow-up questions if you have any. One more has just come through. Maybe we can quickly grab that before we sign off.
Yeah, so the question is, can we send you our fabrics to treat? So yes, it is possible that we treat fabrics supplied by you or your mills. We need to discuss that on a case-by-case basis, because there are definitely some requirements for our process, and we need to make sure that the fabrics are prepared in a certain way. And we do have higher MOQs for setting that up as a process. So depending on your goals and your requirements, definitely recommend looking at the catalog fabrics and working with us to develop them for you. Although if there's really specific cases, we can discuss that as well.
Okay, thanks again, everyone. Thanks for your time. Look forward to hearing from you shortly.
Thanks everyone. Thanks, Kate.
Bye.